It begins quietly, not with the crash of thunder or the blinding flash of revelation, but with quiet, restless stirrings, like distant drums in the marrow of the night or the faintest ripple across an ancient pond. It is the suspicion, barely noticed, that our lives are calling to us, that somewhere, in the folds of ordinary moments, the future whispers with warning and with hope. Most people do not hear these whispers. They dismiss nagging doubts as nothing, treat their quiet yearnings as trivial. But great minds, those rare souls who bend history, they have long sensed that life does not speak in declarations, but in signs. And every day those signs slip past us, like pages turned by an invisible hand, waiting for us to wake up from the long sleep of habit. Look around. Are you drifting on someone else's winds, filling hours with the noise of distractions? Or have you learned, as Marcus Aurelius did by candlelight, to perceive the subtle clues that reality weaves into each day? The signals that warn, that beckon, that promise transformation if only you dare face them. There is a reason ancient sages spent so much time in silence, staring through themselves as if searching for hidden maps. Lao Tzu once wrote, "At the center of your being, you have the answer. You know who you are, and you know what you want." But that answer does not ring out like a trumpet. It trickles in, a shadow across the wall, a twinge of regret after an unkind word, the heaviness in your chest when you pretend to care about things that do not matter. The signs are rarely loud. They wait, patient and unyielding. Imagine your life as a river. Each decision, every neglected thought, is a stone cast into the current. Sometimes the river runs wide and gentle. Sometimes, blocked by accumulated debris, it grows turbid and restless. Too often, we cruise downstream, eyes closed, confident that we are entitled to peace because we have survived storms. But what if peace is not found in drifting, but in learning to read the shape of the river ahead? Benjamin Franklin believed that an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Yet most of us prefer to wait until the levees burst and chaos floods the field before we look for the roots of the rising water. These signs, the ache of boredom, the anger that erupts too suddenly, the conversations that feel emptier with each passing year, they're warnings and invitations at once. The ancient Romans called them monitor, gentle nudges from the gods, clues that the soul is out of balance, that the direction is wrong, that the path requires tending. Today, we call them anxiety, stagnation, or malaise. We drown them in scrolling, in indulgence, in the worship of busyness. But the river does not forget. Every neglected sign is another stone, another narrowing of the current. If you ignore them long enough, you may one day find yourself stranded not by external fate, but by your own refusal to notice. What are these signs? They are subtle, but they are everywhere. Your mind lets you know. The restlessness at night after another day wasted on petty arguments. The dream that visits you 3 nights in a row before finally dissolving. The twinge of envy when you watch someone dare to live the way you once imagined you would. These are not random quirks of the psyche. Epictetus insisted, "First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do." But how many of us even ask the first question, let alone honor the second? Instead, we treat internal discomfort the way children treat monsters under the bed. We shut our eyes and hope they go away. But these signs are not monsters. They are messengers. They are your soul's way of warning you. The cost of avoidance is never paid today. It comes due in the years ahead when you realize that your future self is a stranger, shaped by recoiled dreams and the silence of the ignored. Even the body tries to warn us. The tightness in your gut before you agree to obligations that don't align with your values. The dullness behind your eyes as you labor for someone else's applause. Nietzsche said, "There is more wisdom in your body than in your deepest philosophy." The body is a vessel tuned by centuries of survival, a living weather vane for the storms within. Ignore its counsel, and you will find yourself living half a life, full of dull aches and persistent regrets. These daily symptoms are not mere inconvenience. They are wake-up calls, like the pealing of a bell before dawn, asking you not just to rise, but to awaken. Not simply to exist, but to live on purpose. And here the most dangerous sign of all appears: numbness. The gradual, merciful dulling of your own awareness. The Stoics feared this above all: not pain, not failure, but the slow, creeping surrender of the critical faculty, the death of curiosity, the ossification of belief, the loss of the ability to be jarred awake by the realization that you have drifted off course. When was the last time you felt uncomfortable enough to grow, hunger enough to question, brave enough to begin again? We live in an age that lionizes comfort and anesthetizes pain. We are told, silence discomfort with entertainment, cure boredom with possessions, bury dissatisfaction under distraction. But the old philosophers would urge you otherwise. Let discomfort sting you. Let it rouse you the way an alarm shatters sleep. Because pain is a sign. It is a flag that you've ignored too many warnings, closed your eyes to too many truths. You may think, "It is too late for me," or "The signs are so small, so fleeting. What if I am mistaken?" But the truth is, as Lao Tzu teaches, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. The step begins not in movement, but in perception. The ability to slow the spinning chaos of daily life, to notice the tremors in your spirit, and to ask yourself, why am I uneasy here? What is this discomfort demanding of me? We are all given these whispers, these warnings, these tiny nudges that accumulate into fate. Some people ignore them for a year, a decade, a lifetime. But in every story worth telling, there comes a moment, sometimes quiet, sometimes calamitous, when a person finally listens. President Abraham Lincoln, racked by doubt and melancholy, once wrote, "I am nothing, but truth is everything." He held to that truth even when it cut through him like winter wind, reading the signs of the divided nation not as a curse, but as a call to rise above petty grievances toward a purpose beyond his own comfort. You need not wait for a national crisis or a personal calamity to begin your own awakening. The signs are already with you. In the ache when you speak a lie, in the joy that stirs when you imagine what could be. The signs are in your dreams, in your disappointments, in your persistent regrets, and your fleeting moments of hope. The greatest disservice you can do, not only to yourself, but to the world you will someday leave behind, is to treat these signs as noise, as random static to be ignored. For in each one is a coded message, part of a mosaic that, when finally understood, reveals the map to your own becoming. What happens when you finally decide to listen? The mind, long clouded by half-truths and borrowed beliefs, begins to clear. You begin to see patterns where once there was only chaos. The voices of ancient teachers come alive, not as dusty echoes, but as living reminders that human nature does not change. Only our willingness to witness it, honestly, in ourselves. Beliefs. That is where the second sign emerges, more subtle and more profound. Your beliefs shape the fabric of your days. They color the light that filters through every experience, and they set the limits for what you dare imagine. Most people never interrogate their beliefs. They inherit them. They wear them like hand-me-down clothes. They defend them as if their lives depended on it. But beliefs can be the rusted bars of a prison or the keys to the open sky. We are what we repeatedly do, Aristotle said. Excellence, then, is not an act, but a habit. But beneath those habits, like roots beneath a tree, are your beliefs about who you are and what is possible. How often do you pause to ask, is this true? Not simply, do I want it to be true, or did my parents or teachers tell me it was true? But, have I tested this in the furnace of reality? Does it stand when questioned? 4. It is only in questioning, in the relentless pursuit of clarity, that the weeds of false belief are torn free and new growth begins. Every person carries within them a tapestry of invisible beliefs, shaping every word, every glance, every silent decision. Some believe they are not meant for greatness. Some believe the world is hostile, that kindness is weakness, that love is a transaction best hedged with caution. But these too are signs, not warnings sent from fate, but echoes of old wounds, inherited ignorance, the residue of wounds untreated, and dreams unchased. Your future self is built upon the scaffolding of these beliefs. And here's the danger. When you ignore the chance to examine your beliefs, when you hold fearfully to what no longer serves you, you are not merely pausing your progress, you are eroding the very foundation of your future. Epictetus warned, "It is not things themselves that disturb us, but our opinions about them." Change your opinions. Test them, polish them, discard the ones that do not serve your highest vision, and your whole world transforms. The first step is humility. To admit you do not know, to hold your convictions lightly, ready to change them as new evidence emerges. Benjamin Franklin, genius of invention and reform, made it his life's work to challenge his own mind, even writing down his errors for reflection. He believed the greatest tragedy was not ignorance itself, but the refusal to correct it. This is the next sign. Pay attention not just to what you believe, but to how you defend those beliefs when challenged. Do you feel threatened? Or do you welcome the fire of examination, knowing that truth can withstand the fiercest flames? Growth begins where certainty ends. The man or woman who wishes their future self to thrive must become both gardener and weaver, tending to the roots of conviction, pruning away what withers, letting sunlight in, and daring to replant when the old tree is rotten. This is how a new vision emerges, clear and unfettered. Not a vision borrowed from the world, but one forged in the depths of honest struggle with self-doubt and possibility alike. Your mind is the workshop of your destiny. What you craft there in private dialogues and silent mornings will one day become the reality you inhabit. If you ignore the signs, the gnawing suspicion that you could be more, the discomfort when you betray your values, the fleeting joy when you do what you know is right, you will drift further from your own life, as if watching it through fogged glass. But when you heed these signals, patiently and bravely, you clear that glass. You step into a life that is lived with intention, with fierce attention. The signs transform from warnings into guiding stars. Suddenly the river is not something you fear, but something you can navigate, eyes open, hands steady on the oars, ready for what comes because you have chosen to see. In the dawn-lit moments after awakening, when the stillness of your thoughts echoes against the inside of your skull, something ancient stirs: clarity. It doesn't arrive dressed in certainty, but in the gentle hush that follows an honest reckoning. Clarity's arrival is so quiet that most never notice it. Yet clarity is what the wise of every era have sought. Not perfect knowledge, nor the comfort of easy answers, but the steady light to see the blur in all things. Clarity is the clearing after the storm, the air made sharp and crisp so one can truly see where the obstacles lie and where the paths diverge. How muddied is your inner lens? Most spend decades peering through a fog of assumptions, brittle expectations, and inherited fears. They mistake movement for progress, habit for freedom. Nietzsche once warned, "He who has a why to live can bear almost any how." but to find that why, you must first learn to clear away the debris, remove layer after layer of noise and distraction until what is left rings with unmistakable truth. Clarity is what lets you read the signs that point away from self-betrayal. It is the silence after an argument when, if you are courageous, you listen to the part of yourself that dared to speak up, or the softer part that longs for reconciliation. It is the light by which you can finally see which efforts are wasted in trying to please ghosts and which are worth the pain of true discipline. You cannot ignore what you can finally see in focus. That is the terrifying and liberating thing about clarity. It demands you take responsibility for what you now know. Every philosopher, Epicurus in his gardens, Confucius on the roads of old China, even Franklin on the bustling streets of Philadelphia, designed habits, rituals, and practices to force moments of clarity to the surface. Journaling, meditation, prayer, these are not relics of a bygone era, but the tools with which we chisel away illusion. You need not seek these practices in distant monasteries. You only need a willingness to pause amidst your daily storm and ask, is this truly the life I want? Am I living in alignment with what I value, or am I chasing what I am told to value? With clarity comes vision. There is an alchemy in seeing the true state of your inner world, for out of honest appraisal grows the seed of genuine vision. Goal setting, the scripts say, is common, but crafting a vision, an image of the future that calls forth the best, bravest parts of your soul, this is rare. Your vision is not just a list of wishes, but a contract with your future self. It is the future self looking back, nodding with gratitude and respect at the choices you make today in their name. Every empire, every masterpiece, every revolution in history began with a solitary person seeing something that was not yet visible to others. The question is not whether you will have a vision, but whether you will shape it with intention or let it be shaped by the currents of others' dreams. Marcus Aurelius, caught in the storm of empire, understood that his vision must be internal first. Only by mastering himself could he shepherd the fates of millions. You may not rule Rome, but you rule the kingdom of your heart. And what you envision there will ripple outward for years and generations. Vision is the force that crystallizes intention into reality. It brings order to chaos, coherence to scattered attention. With vision, the thousands of daily decisions, how you rise in the morning, how you speak to strangers, which fears you honor and which you banish, become aligned. Whether you realize it or not, you are always building your future, moment by moment. The self of tomorrow is constructed out of the actions and inactions of today. But vision cannot stand alone, any more than the mind can shape muscle without the discipline of exercise. And here stands the next sign that cannot be ignored: discipline. Not the grim, punishing discipline of forced labor, but the dignified discipline of someone who has chosen their path with open eyes and clear heart. He who cannot obey himself will be commanded, Nietzsche warns. The discipline the ancients revered was less about repression and more about devotion. The devotion to a vision worthy of suffering, a cause so vital that fleeting pleasure no longer tempts. Discipline begins not in denial but in affirmation. You do not train yourself to wake before dawn simply to prove your will, but to become the sort of person who honors their own promise. Epictetus reminds, freedom is the only worthy goal in life. It is won by disregarding things that lie beyond our control. Discipline is remembering what is truly yours: attention, energy, focus, and refusing to give these away to whatever passing fancy or petty vice would siphon off your power. If you listen, your life will signal exactly where discipline is lacking. The unfinished projects, the conversations left hanging, the sense of being divided against yourself. These are not moral failings, but invitations back to your own power. Whenever you break your word to yourself, the future self grows weaker. Whenever you honor it, the future self stands taller. Imagine the gratitude that future self would feel, the relief that someone, somewhere in your lineage, decided to become reliable, to become sovereign over themselves. Discipline does not ask for perfection but for persistence, the habit of showing up day after day for the life you claim you want, the willingness to begin again no matter how many times you falter, the humility to admit what must be changed, and the resolve to begin changing it quietly and steadfastly. Action is the outward sign that all the inner work has taken root. The old Zen proverb cuts to the heart: knowledge without transformation is not wisdom. You may read every book, hear every warning, nod along to every voice that tells you what matters, but the world and your future self only cares about what you do with what you know. Are you waiting for the perfect moment, the optimal conditions, the confidence to begin? Do you tell yourself the lie that you need to feel ready, safe, unafraid? Every person who has accomplished anything worth remembering did so in the presence of doubt and imperfection. Benjamin Franklin, inventor, diplomat, philosopher, resolved every morning before looking at the world's needs to ask, "What good shall I do this day?" He did not wait for inspiration. He acted, and in acting, inspiration came. Your actions, the bricks and mortar of your days, create the structure your future self will inhabit. Every time you act despite fear, every time you risk discomfort for the sake of alignment, a brick is placed, another wall of possibility rises. Ignore the signs that urge you toward action, that small voice saying, "Begin now, before you are ready," and you will stay forever in the unfinished rooms of regret. No, one is born disciplined. No one arrives at clarity and vision fully formed. Great lives are composed not of grand gestures, but of daily choices. Each one an answer to the same question: will I honor the signs given to me, or will I turn away once more and pretend I do not see? Gratitude is the hidden sign, the one most easily missed, yet the most transformative. It is not merely the joy of what you already have, but the grace to receive even pain and failure as teachers. He is a wise man who does not grieve for the things which he has not, Epicurus wrote, but rejoices for those which he has. When you practice gratitude, the signs that once felt accusatory soften. Regret turns into wisdom, disappointment into resilience. You become the sort of person who, even in hardship, can say, "I am learning, I am becoming." Gratitude does not make you complacent. It makes you attentive. You begin to see how far you have come, how many dangers you have survived, how many gifts you possess that once seemed ordinary. Your struggles become badges of honor, proof that you did not give up when it would have been easy to do so. And you begin to see your future self not as a distant hope or abstract ideal, but as a living presence, urging you on. Gratitude is the bridge between who you are and who you will become. Look at the arc of your days, the slight lift when you notice something beautiful, the pang of sorrow at a missed chance, the ache of yearning for something just beyond your grasp. These too are signs, subtle invitations to be present in your own one and only existence. Adaptability springs forth from presence, not from mere calculation. Markings on a calendar do not make you flexible. It is your willingness to meet each new moment with an open mind and a supple heart that defines your character. History writes its most luminous stories about those who bent, not broke, when the winds shifted. Lao Tzu compared the willow to the oak. The rigid tree is easily broken, the flexible survives the storm. Modern life rewards those who adapt, who notice without ego when what worked yesterday fails today, and who refuse to cling to the comfort of old victories. If you ignore the signs of change, if you rigidly defend the status quo, you build your own irrelevant stroke by stroke. Yet adaptability is not the abandonment of core values. It is the wisdom to shed what has become unnecessary. It is the insight to question even your strengths, as Franklin did while weathering personal defeat, as Aurelius did, holding together an empire that seemed always close to unraveling. These individuals rewrote their stories again and again, not out of weakness, but out of fierce fidelity to what mattered most. The flexible are not faithless. They are driven by a loyalty to something deeper than pride. Ask yourself, as the ancient Stoics did, where in your life are you clinging to a version of yourself that the world no longer needs? What are you defending that, if let go, would free your hands for something greater? To adapt is to trust that you are more than any single trait or achievement. It's the humility to start as a beginner, no matter your age, and the courage to find opportunity disguised as failure. But whatever flexibility you claim, the world will test it. Hardship does not knock. It storms the gates and burns the banners you have hung in comfort's name. In these moments, resilience reveals itself. Not as a single act of bravery, but as the accumulated effect of 1,000 small responses to adversity. The future self who stands strong is built from countless moments when you refused to be defined by your circumstances. History's greatest figures were rarely sheltered from storms. Aurelius wrote his meditations on war-torn fields, not in quiet luxury. Frederick Douglass, born into chains, forged his freedom with the resilience of his spirit, refusing to let a brutal world dictate the limits of his mind. What each of them had in common was not immunity to pain, but the ability to meet it with clarity, adaptiveness, and an unwavering commitment to something larger than any single defeat. Resilience is neither denial of suffering nor the absence of sorrow. It is the daily, stubborn refusal to give up one iota of dignity or possibility. When you face hardship as teacher, let it grind you not into dust, but into diamond. Each time you fail but rise again, you accumulate a force of character that will echo across every future obstacle. To ignore the signs of weariness, of growing bitterness, is to neglect the very roots that feed your resilience. Take inventory. Where has cynicism crept in? Are there wounds unhealed, anger unspoken, dreams quietly mourned but never buried with honor? The resilient do not sweep pain under the rug. They acknowledge it, honor it, and use it as leverage for growth. Nietzsche once mused, "To live is, to suffer to survive is to find some meaning in the suffering." In this meaning, resilience is born. Learning is the engine that converts suffering into wisdom. If you treat every event, especially every failure, as curriculum, you ascend past the rote cycle of mistake and regret. Learning is not capped at childhood or school. It is the continual project of the wise. The future self you will become depends on your willingness to see each mistake not as a verdict, but as a waypoint. Franklin, relentless experimenter, was never afraid to be wrong. In each failed invention, each political misstep, he found, sometimes after bitterness, insight too precious to abandon. What about your mistakes? Where have you recoiled in shame and retreated into a smaller world? Where, if you examined with loving scrutiny, could growth still begin? The signs are everywhere. Missed opportunities, repeated patterns you cannot explain, the stories you tell yourself about why it's too late or not for people like me. Truth. Every excuse you repeat is a clue, a bright flare shooting up from the unconscious, urging you to learn rather than run. Only the stagnant believe they are beyond learning. The future belongs to those who embrace ignorance not as a curse, but as a compass. Slowly, over season after season, your learning turns into wisdom, the strongest sign of all, the one your future self prizes above any passing triumph or failed endeavor. Wisdom is what you become when you stop worshipping reputation, security, even comfort, and set your sights on the deeper gifts: patience, integrity, gentleness, discernment, courage. It is wisdom that allows you to spot the next sign with confidence, to welcome both happiness and challenge without losing your center. Wisdom, you'll find, is not imprisoned in ivory towers, nor is it reserved for the canonized and the legendary. It reveals itself in your daily choices: how you treat the barista, how you respond to a child's question, how you speak to yourself when no one is listening. Wisdom is the sum of all your overlooked signs, paid attention to and acted upon with humility. No one arrives at it all at once. The path twists and stumbles. Sometimes you see only in hindsight the importance of the moments you almost ignored. The signs you refuse today become the regrets of tomorrow, but every sign you honor lights the way for the next, and soon your whole life becomes illuminated, not blindingly but warmly, like the steady glow of a lantern held by a true friend leading you through midnight woods. Would you live this way? If you truly believed your future self was watching, aching, hoping for you to rise, then do not ignore the callings. Meet discomfort with curiosity, meet routine with imagination, meet setbacks with a learner's heart. Each day there are signs. Are you willing to see them and let them change the shape of who you are becoming? The river moves on. Its currents become your destiny. Its eddies, your struggles, its clear pools, your moments of rest and awareness. But unlike the river, you can choose. Do you drift aimlessly, eyes closed against warning, or do you steer by the stars, by the subtle, sacred signs that appear only for those who dare to receive them? And in this, the journey spirals higher. Every sign heeded is a promise kept to your future self. Not merely a life improved, but a soul awakened. Through the humility of constant learning, the flexibility of adaptation, and the quiet, indomitable force of resilience, you become not just a survivor, but a guide and a light for others. The signs have always been there. All that remains is the courage to see and the will to act. There is a moment, quiet yet undeniable, when you sense the future self drawing closer. Not as a distant idea, but as a presence in the room, breathing with you, shaped by everything you choose now. It is not some mystical entity waiting passively for your arrival. No, your future self is the living echo of your courage, discipline, adaptability, and kindness, made real by the signs you answer and the ones you ignore. All through history, the wise have spoken of this inner witness. Marcus Aurelius called it the guardian within, Epictetus the daimon, Franklin the better angel of our nature. Lao Tzu called it the uncarved block, the pure potential untouched by habit or circumstance. But what does that mean for you here, now on the edge of decision? It means you do not live only for this moment, though this moment is all you will ever touch. Every act of discipline, getting up when you don't feel like it, saying no to what poisons you, starting again after failure, writes a word in the biography of your future self. Every act of kindness, even when no one sees, is a weight on the scale of legacy. Every risk you take, not recklessly, but in service of a deeper call, expands the boundaries of your destiny. Imagine if you could see the web of cause and effect, how one tiny choice feeds forward into all the rooms you will one day inhabit. The colleague you help today becomes the friend who stands by you at your lowest. The routine you resist tomorrow becomes the discipline that saves you years of suffering. The apology you swallow out of pride becomes the wound that festers for a decade. Or turned right, the healing that sets whole generations free. You don't need prophecy to read these outcomes. Life shows its pattern over and over. The signs you ignore return again and again, sometimes as gentle nudges, sometimes as heartbreak, illness, lost opportunity. They do not punish, but they do judge. And when not heeded, they sharpen. But when you begin at last to look them full in the face, transformation does not arrive like a hurricane. It seeps into the cracks, strengthening what was weak, restoring what was lost, till the whole foundation of your days feels sturdier beneath you. See yourself, old but vivid, eyes bright, not with regret, but gratitude. The future self cannot speak except through dreams and echoes, but if you listen, you will hear its voice in the places you want to quit, the conversations you almost avoid, and the smallest acts of grace you extend for no reward. Thank you, it will say, not for being perfect, not for never falling down, but for not giving in to blindness. Thank you for seeing where we were drifting. Thank you for daring to ask, is this really what I want? Thank you for returning again and again to the work of being awake. This is what it means to change the story of your life. Not to erase the scars or pretend away the failures, but to gather all that hurt, all that confusion, and make of it a compass, a tool that serves not only yourself but everyone you touch. The world will tell you that you are in charge of little, that fate is a straitjacket and freedom a mirage. But every philosophy worth the name, every tradition that has weathered centuries, insists on the opposite. You are called to attention. You are offered signs. Some of these will be painful, the job that ends without warning, the friendship that withers, the slow erosion of your confidence after too many years in the wrong story. Some signs will be gentle, the book that comes at the right hour, the stranger's smile when you most need it, the spark of inspiration during an ordinary commute. All are messages. All are invitations to respond differently than you have before. Refuse them and life narrows until you barely recognize your reflection. But answer one, and it need not be grand, it need not be loud, and the world begins to open. One act of honesty with yourself. One morning where, instead of reaching for your old distractions, you sit quietly and ask, where am I being called? What truth am I hiding from? One apology, one boundary, one attempt at something new, and suddenly the air changes, the river bends, the future shifts, imperceptibly at first, then unmistakably. Nothing that matters is found outside the circle of your own choices. You will never control the storms, but you can refuse to be defined by them. You cannot dictate others' actions, but you can refuse to betray yourself for their favor. You cannot guarantee ease, but you can guarantee meaning. You can show up, confused but curious, afraid but willing, imperfect but awake. Every morning, the world resets, the sun rising as if for the first time. Each day a canvas the old philosophers would have called sacred. Do you drift or do you paint? Do you reach for what numbs or for what rings true? Do you let comfort steal your initiative, or do you rise to greet the discomfort that signals, here is the edge, here is where growth is possible? That is all anyone has ever done who became someone worth becoming. They saw the signs, sometimes early, sometimes late, but always at the cost of self-deception. And when the cost grew too high, they chose truth, even when it hurt, over false peace. For that is the only peace worth having, the inner alignment of a day well lived, a lesson learned, a small act of courage against the relentless tide of inertia. You too have this chance. You always have. The signs are not locked behind the wisdom of ages, nor buried in the texts of vanished sages. They wait in your ordinary life, the restless ache, the spark of desire, the resistance, the strange hope. Listen, as Marcus listened, as Franklin listened, as every soul before you who woke from sleep has listened, and then move. Do not leave your life unwritten. Do not give your future self reason to grieve what was lost to fear and neglect. Take the next right step, not the next perfect one, but the next honest one. It is enough. And when you do, when you pay attention, when you answer those quiet urgings with curiosity and resolve, the world changes. Maybe not all at once, and maybe not in ways you expect. But inside, the weather shifts, and the horizon brightens, and you discover that you can trust yourself, and that alone is the beginning of all wisdom. Let the world keep its noise. Let fate hurl its trials and fortune its turns. You have work to do. The work of watching for the signs, the work of listening for what wants to be born, the work of tending the smallest ember of possibility until it becomes a blaze that lights not only your own path, but the dark for others as well. This is your time. This is your invitation. There will never be another you, another day, another chance to become what waits inside, patiently for you to answer. The signs are here. See them. Honor them. Take them seriously. Your future self is waiting, and when the day comes, you will meet their eyes, clear, grateful, awake, and you will know you did not sleepwalk your way through a borrowed life. You answered the call. You paid attention. You became who you were meant to be, and for that, your future self will thank you. Quietly, fiercely, with a gratitude that echoes through every corner of what you were brave enough to call your life. In the closing hush, imagine dusk wrapping the world in its gentle arms, the last light lingering just long enough to show you what matters most. There is a sacred pause, a breath that belongs to you alone, when every lesson, every sign, every choice compresses into a single question. Will you live awake or will you drift? Centuries dissolve in this question. The robes of philosophers fall away, the glare of history gives way to quiet candlelight, and you stand in the stillness of your own becoming. You, with your bruises and victories, your hesitations and hopes, know more and no less than any soul who has ever shaped the currents of the world. The voice of your future self vibrates in the silence, not a thunder, but a knowing. Rise, rise again. Because every day you hesitate is a day you could have been making something sacred of the ordinary. Every moment swept by in unconsciousness is a moment that could have been stitched into a tapestry of meaning. And meaning is the only true wealth life offers. Do not think that this message is for those with greater gifts or clearer vision. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire, but his truest struggles were invisible, fought alone in the halls of his own mind. Franklin shaped nations, but never ceased in his relentless improvement of his inner world, jotting down failures by night so that mornings could begin anew with hope. You possess the same raw material. Your destiny is spun from your willingness to listen. Some days, your signs will shout. A crisis, a heartbreak, the death of something you thought essential. Some days, they will arrive as a whisper, the tug to call an old friend, the ache to write a single honest sentence, the courage to decline what is comfortable but false. Over time, you will see that the difference between those who feel alive and those who feel embalmed is not an accident of fate. It is this: the alive pay heed to the small signs before the large ones are forced upon them. They do not wait for the world to turn upside down before they check their compass and choose again. If you close yourself to the world, you will miss the signs that could free you. Risk opening. Risk making the call, writing the page, walking through the fear. Every act of honest engagement is answered. Perhaps not quickly, perhaps not as you wish, but always, always life quietly rewards the attentive soul. Allow yourself to grieve the years spent in sleep. Forgive yourself for the moments of blindness and the times you chose what was easy rather than what was right. You are not meant to be flawless, you are meant to be present. The lamp of awareness cannot erase your scars, but it can turn them into markers on the map of your journey, reminders not to stray again. Picture the path. Ahead, a winding road with shadows and sudden bursts of light. You do not need to see the end. One step is enough. The smallest sign, answered with courage, does more to shape your future than lifetimes spent in idle rehearsal. Speak now, in the privacy of your own heart, a vow, to see what asks to be seen, to listen when the inner voice pipes up, to question the belief that binds you, to change what needs changing, to return, again and again, to the discipline of attention. For attention is love, and to love your own life is the beginning of all transformation. When stumbles come, and they will, remember, as the Stoics have, that obstacles are not interruptions, but the very path. The impediment to action advances action, said Marcus. What stands in the way becomes the way. Do not turn from the sign because it is painful. Move toward it, let it instruct you. These are the moments that sculpt character, when defiance turns to wisdom and wounds become wings. Envision yourself decades from now, lines around your eyes, but a fire behind them. You will not remember every triumph or failure, but you will remember the days you awoke, the mornings you dared to steer your course instead of following the current. You will recall the single choice to speak, to apologize, to try one more time. The day you said yes when you'd always said no. The gratitude you feel now for your own alertness will outshine the regret for what you could not control. Now, let all the signs of your life, large and small, converge here, as if drawn by gravity to the core of truth. You are the river, you are the oar, you are the map maker and the road ahead. You are the dream of your ancestors' hope, living proof that change is not just possible, but inevitable for those who choose it. And as you commit, not to some distant finish line, but to this day and the next, something extraordinary happens. You begin not just to receive signs, but to become one, a living symbol of courage, humility, and love for those who follow. Look up. The dusk has deepened, but the stars emerge, scattered like seeds across the unknown. Each one is a sign. Each one is a possibility. The future self you will become shines back at you from that horizon, eyes bright, hand outstretched in thanks, inviting you forward, always forward, into a life worthy of your deepest longing. So go. Do not ignore these signs. Start today. Start this moment. Let every breath, every hesitation, every hope be a signal to return to what matters most. The world will change when you do. Not in an instant, but irrevocably, beautifully, and forever. And in the end, when all is said and done, when your story is a constellation of choices made awake, you will hear it, the soft, steady voice of your future self rising up in gratitude, a lifelong echo, a promise fulfilled. Thank you. Thank you for listening. Thank you for living. Thank you for becoming. Now you stand at the edge, not of something ending, but of something stirring quietly within you, awaiting your permission to breathe. This is your invitation. This, right here, right now, is the crossing of threshold, the moment old voices are set aside, and the silent promise to yourself is finally spoken aloud. Nothing outside must change. No permission from the world is required. Only your attention, your willingness to heed the gentle nudge, is enough to remake your direction, no matter how small that first turn. Do you feel it? That awakened pulse, the way uncertainty lifts, just a little, when you say yes to your own potential instead of your old limitations. The past bows away, losing its power, for what you do next is the only thing that matters. The true story of your life isn't what has happened, but what you choose now, faithfully, fiercely, with eyes finally open. Breathe in the fullness of this reality. Every lesson, every sign, every disappointment, and every hope, they have all been preparing you for this. You do not need to be without flaw or fear. You need only be awake enough to notice when life whispers, and brave enough to respond with a single true act. Let this become your daily ritual. not waiting for a grand signal or perfect certainty, but standing as the old souls did, attentive at the crossroads, trusting that courage is a muscle built in the smallest acts of honesty. From this practice rises dignity, and from dignity comes the quiet pride of a life well accounted for, one that your future self surveys and smiles at with love, not longing. Hold fast to this. No one will give you your worth. You claim it, moment by moment, by meeting the demands of your own becoming. Every day, you choose whether to dull your senses or to sharpen them, to shrink into old stories or to pen new ones. Each ignored sign is a weight on the heart. Each heeded sign lightens the load for all your remaining days. Time, that relentless river, cannot be stopped, but you can steer within its flow. You can decide, right now, that your biography will not be written in absent-minded drift, but in bold brushstrokes of presence and response, that you will leave behind not regret, but gratitude. That you will grow wise, not only for yourself, but so that your living becomes a lantern for those who must travel in darkness. There will be more signs in the days ahead. Some will be swift and sharp, some so quiet you may nearly miss them, but you will be ready. You will smile at discomfort, seeing within it your truest chance. You will honor regret, letting it teach you rather than bind you. You will taste sorrow and find it deepens all beauty. You will see fear, and still you will move, not as one seeking escape, but as one called forward by a vision glimpsed clearer each morning. And with every small, intentional answer, you write a message to the one waiting at the horizon. I saw, I heard, I changed, I lived. Against the clamor and neglect of a distracted age, you will have chosen to be awake. And in that wakefulness, you will find not only your truest strength, but your truest joy. Let it be this way, that the life you build becomes the answer to the signs you once ignored. That the gratitude of your future self is not a distant fantasy, but a living warmth, pulsing through every step you take from this moment onward. Walk forward. Become the one who pays attention, the one who answers the call. For in the end, it is not fate, nor fortune, nor the world itself that will define you, but how bravely and how often you chose to see. Your future self is watching, waiting, learning from every step. Give them a story worth their thanks, and when the day comes that you meet them whole and awake, you will understand. To stop ignoring these signs was the very act that changed everything.